I suppose we are.
Yay! Look at
that. So let's go back before we go into what we're talking about today. It's how hot there?
Okay, so the last time I checked on my phone, it was 37 degrees Celsius.
And Heathrow was 42, I think you said, which for anyone in the United States is about 107.
Yeah. So we're having a heat wave, basically, and it should break tonight. We should be into some cooler weather. We've even got rainstorm warnings now, which is getting a bit crazy. But yeah, we're having a really hot period, and everybody's going, wow, this is far too hot. I can't cope with it. Yet they're the same people who actually pay for 2 weeks in Spain where it's like that kind of temperature.
Yeah, but if a place is built for it, it's one thing. You know, like if you go to Arizona and all of the architecture there is built for a place that's hot, right? So moving buildings, whereas everything in the UK is built to hold heat. So it's a little different.
Look, we have problems when there's leaves on the railway line.
That's a very valid point.
Yeah. So, you know, we panic. Oh, look, there's a leaf on the line, cancel the trains, and we're done. You know, that's it. We all go home. So, yeah, hot weather, we're not prepared for that. It's just not something that happens.
Yeah, but talking about trains is a perfect segue into what we're talking about today, which are tips for helping attendees navigate travel. Travel disruption.
Because travel is still being a pain in the people are still suffering travel problems.
Oh, it's horrible. I mean,
we're having massive problems here because trains are being cancelled. We've got people fainting at various railway stations like Paddington. The people are turning up. The trains are being cancelled. It's too hot for them to be there, so they're fainting and medical attention. So basically, in the world of business travel or just travel in general, we're still suffering an awful lot of problems.
Yeah, and airports, you know, are an absolute mess. You know, when I came into the UK and we met up a couple of weeks ago, you know, it took 90 minutes to get our bags when we landed in Manchester, UK. They're like, we just don't have enough people. You know,
that's also another thing, staffing problems. So that's not helping.
Well, when I go to O'Hare, it's 7:00 in the morning on a weekday. And, you know, all the Hudson News or whatever, you know, the little newsstand where you get your sodas and your waters and things. Half of them are closed because there's no staff. I mean, the security queues are ungodly.
And the people who are there doing their job are doing the very best that they can. So it can't be any complaints there. It's just, we're just going through a tough time in travel at the moment.
Yeah, and so these are some tips, and this conversation came about because I think it was CBS News, right? We saw, you know, I saw an article and I shared it with Bob, and I'm like, hey, we should do this for our next episode. You know, they had the travel guy Peter Greenberg contributed to this, and that's kind of where we're kind of basing off these. They had 6 tips, we have 7, and then we'll share the link to the article to get a professional's perspective. I mean, I guess we are professionals, but that's our bullet list.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. All right, so most of these tips are from you. So I'll lead by saying, what's your first tip?
Well, book through the airline. You know, if you tell your attendees, you know, and again, communication is key with events, right? So you want to give all of your attendees, your staff, anyone involved, as much information as possible. And when it comes to travel, you know, send out these tips, right? Make their job. You know, a lot of people will try to bury it, cover it over and say, well, they'll get there when they get there. But be proactive and let people know things that they can do to make their journey a little bit better. And booking through the airline is key. And the reason why is if you go for the cheapest fare, right? And a lot of times the airline does have the cheapest fare, but if you go through Expedia or any of those sites, what is happening is if anything goes wrong with that flight, you know, now have to go through Expedia or cheap tickets or whatever it is you booked it through to get a remedy, right? You can't, if you get a United flight through Expedia, you can't call United. You have to call Expedia. Whereas for an extra $40 or 40 pounds, whatever it happens to be, you can actually call and talk to an agent who is with the airline, which is
So basically, sorry to cut in, but basically you're saying cut out the middleman, so you've got that one-to-one connection. So all right, so you may not get the discount that you're hoping for. You may pay a bit more for it, but you have the reassurance that if something goes wrong, and invariably it does, you've got that one-to-one connection that you can then get the problem sorted out and maybe refunded better than you might do if you went through an agent.
Yeah, and my caveat to that as well is, if your organization is booking travel for staff and for speakers and things like that, use a managed travel service. Like we had Elliot from Amtrav on a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Because again, the people that are behind the keyboards in that case are there to help you. It's managed travel, and they also plug right into United or whoever it is, right into their system, so they are actually able to make changes and things like that, just like the airline would be able to. Whereas an online service like Expedia or whatever, you might be left out in the cold.
Especially if you can't get hold of anybody and it ends up being emails only. How frustrating is that going to be?
Well, especially if you're on your way to the airport, right? That's when it gets out of control. And actually, on the way to the airport is a perfect segue to the next bullet, which is catching the first flight of the day. And that one should just be obvious, right? If you go for the first flight and it's canceled or something happens, there are more flights during the day, hopefully.
Yeah. If you take the last one of the day, there are no more flights if it gets cancelled. So yeah.
This is actually probably going to come up a little bit later, but another thing that I've always found extremely helpful, and actually as an event planner and have an event company, even if it's at our expense, we will often go in the day before we're supposed to be there, right? That way you get even more cushion, right? If we're supposed to be there Wednesday, we'll fly in on Tuesday, only because then if you get bumped all the way to the end of the day, you're still on time. Whereas if you're supposed to be there Wednesday morning, that flight's canceled or whatever, and next thing you know, it's 2 p.m, you've lost a day.
Yeah. Oh, and so fly direct. You said
when possible. And the article actually had a really good example of what they meant by fly direct, right? From Chicago to New York is easy, right? There's 100 flights a day from here to Boston. There's plenty of flights per day. If you're in the UK, I'm sure there are 100 flights to Paris every day. But what they're talking about is using hubs strategically. So if you have to be in Milwaukee, fly New York to Chicago and then drive the 90 minutes up to Milwaukee. Right. So you're going from a very large airport to a very large airport, which are less chance for things to go wrong. Whereas a lot of times if you're making connections, especially to smaller airports, there may only be one flight in a day.
Yeah. I suppose to yourself and other Americans, driving 90 minutes is like nothing.
No.
Because everything's far away. In the UK, obviously 90 minutes is, like London to Manchester maybe or something. I don't know. So it seems like quite a long time in a car. But the main aim... Sorry?
When I was 20 years old, I drove 17 hours to go to a party.
That's quite a thing.
It is. That's the American way.
Hopefully it was a really good party to make it worth it.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Oh, okay, good. But the point you're making is that if you can cut out a flight, which is going to be devastating if it gets cancelled, then the better you are, because obviously you can jump into a hire car, a taxi, a train, something that's got more frequency, more reliability to it.
Yeah, and then the next point here, I'm banging things. The next point kind of goes with that is upgrade to be first in line, right? And that's for getting your carry-ons up, but also upgrading is going to allow you certain perks, right? So if you're able to upgrade to, first class, you're going to a different help desk. Your wait time is going to be considerably lower, but just upgrading yourself with security alone, right? If you don't have TSA pre, or I use Clear to skip the big, huge long lines, upgrading yourself in the security line is, if you go to the Premier line, it's typically going to be much shorter than the regular line.
So basically, you get what you pay for. The more you pay, the easier it is going through.
Yeah, it's kind of the way the world works, man.
It does seem to be that way, doesn't it? Sadly. But you do have a... Sorry?
You're going to say the next bullet point, and I'm going to go, because I didn't get it.
Yeah, okay. I just looked, I reread it, and I've read it a couple of times, and I'm still going, what? Travel on a Wednesday.
And we're going to segue right out of that one, because I have no idea why they were saying travel on a Wednesday.
I'm only theorizing, but it could be that if you've got to be somewhere, you have to be there at least on a Monday or Tuesday. If you're leaving somewhere, you'll probably do it on a Thursday and Friday. So I suspect Wednesdays are probably the quiet day.
Yeah. Or maybe going into places like Orlando and things like that, Thursday night and Friday are all the families, and they're telling you to go on Wednesday to beat the rush.
Well, this is a devious plan to get everybody to go on a Wednesday, leaving Mondays and Fridays really much quieter.
There you go.
So that's one sorted out. Okay, moving on then. Only bring carry-ons where possible.
Because I carry a lot of equipment, typically that a lot of times doesn't work for me. I have to check a bag. And if you're on a direct flight, it's not so bad if you're checking, because it literally only has to make it to the one plane. And if it makes it there, it's going to make it all the way. Yeah. So I'll amend that one a little bit. And I get it. Only bring a carry-on. It's much faster. You're in, you're out. But if you have to check luggage, don't be the person who gets to the airport 45 minutes before the flight, right? Give your bag time. Like, if you've ever looked at how O'Hare moves luggage,
yeah,
it can take a substantial amount of time for your bag to go from United to wherever that gate is.
I think I think I've seen a video of it. It may have been O'Hare, where it seems like the baggages are actually going a much further distance than you are. It's just miles and miles of these conveyor belts and escalators and machinery. They go much further. They should get air miles just for traveling around an airport.
Right? I'm telling you. So again, as long as you give yourself enough time to get there, and if you have to make a connecting flight, hopefully you have enough time and your plane arrives on time so that your bag can make it over to the next plane. But I've even been on some really super tight connections. Where was I flying? Oh my God, I can't remember. But I literally, my connection landed, and my next gate was literally just across the way. And I got off of one plane, walked across. They had already boarded that plane. I walked onto the plane, sat down, got to the other end, and my bag had made it. So just give yourself enough time.
Okay. This is the next. What?
This is the one you added on. I actually really like it.
No, this is this. I was about to say this is the one I added on. So it's never going to go right. Your travel plans are going to have a hiccup. It's going to be a problem some way at some point, like a cancellation. Your bag goes missing. You've ended up in the wrong country. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that are going to go wrong. Please assume that there's going to go wrong and then have a backup plan.
Hope for the best, expect the worst.
Exactly. So look at your itinerary. Where are you going from? Where are you going to get to? Do you have to drive afterwards, or are you going to have to get a taxi? You can make life for yourself a little bit easier by having some. I mean, I'm not saying you have to meticulously plan anything, but just look ahead. Oh, this airport's got not got taxis, but if there's a problem, I could always get a hired car. But there is a bus and there's a train connection.
Yeah,
so know your options basically, and know what you can do to get over a problem.
Stay calm and don't get upset. Right. And, case in point was a few years ago, I had to be in Orlando for an event. And was it Tampa? No, Miami. Um, and the way that it was supposed to go was I was actually supposed to take a little itty bitty puddle jumper over. But it was the day that some dude, and this is an American thing, some dude walked into the terminal and was shooting people. And that was a few hours before my flight. So obviously all of the flights were canceled and I had to be in Orlando. Well, you know what I did? I went over and got a bus ticket because buses in Florida going between Miami and Orlando are a dime a dozen. I hopped on a bus and 3 hours later I was sitting in Orlando, right? You just have to go with the flow.
Yeah, you might be late, you might not be on time, but at least you got there with your backup plan.
Yeah, and going back to all the other bullet points we just mentioned, if you've given yourself enough time, if you're coming in the day before, if you're, you can deal, you have a lot less stress when you're dealing with all of those things that are going wrong.
Yeah, and just one other last thing to mention is I always, whenever there's been a problem with anything, right, and you've got to phone up customer support or you've got to go and see somebody at a desk, I always like to think it's not the person that's at fault, it's the system that has hiccuped somewhere or has failed. So always be nice to the people that you deal with because things will go faster. And be a nicer person.
Being nice will always get you, right?
Yeah.
It's I'm always nice to gate agents, to the people that are checking my bag. When you are super nice, I walked into United for the Boston trip I just had for the event in Boston, and my bag was 52 pounds, right? Because I had tripods in it and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And when I put that up on the scale, I had been super nice the whole time. The lady looked at it and put it on the conveyor belt, whereas she could have said, "You're overweight. It's an extra $75." Right. And so being nice, besides keeping your blood pressure low, their blood pressure low, does have some perks that go with it, which is people will do nice things for you.
Yeah, be nice, and people will be nice in return. So it's always to keep in mind. As I say, it's normally the system that's at fault, not because someone's messed up. General rule.
Yeah. So basically, we're saying the system's screwed.
Don't travel. Stay at home and be calm. And stay at the sunshine. Yeah.
Well, look at that. We did it. 15 minutes again.
We're getting good at this.
We are getting good at this. But thank you to anyone who happens to be watching. We came in here pretty quick today. We didn't do a lot of pre-planning on this one, but I think those are some really good bullets that can help out. And look for us in August because we're going to be trying to go everyday live.
Yeah. It's one of those sort of, it's really, really scary to do, but at the same time, really exciting. Looking forward to it. 31 days of going live.
And it should be pretty cool, only because I'll be stumbling my way through, a couple of different events over August, which means I have to go live from wherever we happen to be at. One will be the Philadelphia Convention Center, which is kind of cool. Hopefully we can snag some pretty cool guests.
Yeah. Yeah, it should be good. And if anybody wants to be a guest during those 31 days,
hang us. We're going to have a lot of time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And we're not doing the sort of like, we have to do today, so we better just do a couple of minutes. No, we're going to probably try and aim for proper length episodes each day for 31 days.
15 minutes a day.
Yes.
Now, if I could only work out 15 minutes a day.
No comment.
And on that note, goodbye.
We better go. Yeah. All right.